A millionaire desperate to cure his blind son discovers a poor girl on the streets who holds the key to the impossible. What begins as an unlikely encounter turns into the miracle that will change not only a boy's life, but the destiny of an entire family. If you enjoy stories like this, watch until the end, subscribe to this channel, and leave your comment telling us where you're listening from. In the luxurious penthouse of a London skyscraper, Augustus Henderson observed the city through the glass wall of his private office. He was a successful businessman, owner of one of the country's largest technology companies. The figures on his screen projected a 30% growth for the next quarter. But those numbers, once so important, now seemed empty in the face of his greatest challenge, his son Matthew's congenital blindness. The boy, only 8 years old, had his father's strong features and the sweet smile he inherited from his mother. Matthew was born without sight, a victim of a rare genetic condition that affected the development of his optic nerves. "Mr. Henderson, Dr. Sterling has just confirmed the appointment for tomorrow in Oxford." Mrs. Clara's voice, his secretary for over 2 decades, interrupted his thoughts. "Thank you, Clara," Augustus replied automatically. It was the 32nd specialized consultation in the last 2 years. His fortune, estimated in billions, was powerless before that diagnosis which seemed immutable. In the next room, Matthew played the piano, his fingers gliding precisely over the keys. Music was his refuge, his way of seeing the world. Augustus approached silently, watching his son with a mixture of admiration and pain. "Daddy, is that you?" Matthew interrupted the melody. His senses, especially his hearing, had developed extraordinarily to compensate for the absence of sight. "How did you know it was me?" Augustus asked, sitting beside his son on the piano bench. "Your perfume, and the way the floorboards creak when you walk." Matthew smiled, that smile that always warmed the businessman's heart. The next day, another clinic, another specialist, another hope that would soon turn into disappointment. Dr. Sterling was considered an eminence in the field of regenerative ophthalmology. He had a modern clinic in Oxford, a city that had become a reference in health in the Oxfordshire countryside. "Mr. Henderson, we have tested all conventional approaches. Only one possibility remains, an experimental stem cell procedure being developed in Switzerland." The doctor's words echoed distantly for Augustus, who had heard similar promises in Tokyo, New York, Berlin, and other capitals around the world. Meanwhile, 40 miles away in central London, a 13-year-old girl walked among the stalls of Borough Market, collecting discarded fruits and vegetables. Iris Stone had curly hair framing a face marked by life on the streets, but her dark eyes held a rare intensity, as if they could see beyond appearances. An orphan since she was 7, Iris survived with small jobs. She carried bags for the elderly, parked cars, sold sweets at traffic lights. She slept in a shelter in Camden Town when she managed to arrive before the gates closed, or improvised shelter under awnings when night surprised her far from there. "Girl, want to earn a few pounds?" The voice came from a stall selling medicinal herbs and esoteric products. It was Mr. Gerald, a 70-year-old man who looked like he carried stories from many lives. "I need to organize these boxes. I'll pay £10 and give you a snack." Iris accepted promptly. While organizing bottles of essential oils and packets of herbs, she watched fascinated the colorful bottles on the highest shelf. "What's in those bottles up there, Mr. Gerald?" she asked, pointing to a golden liquid that shone even in the dim light of the stall. The old vendor stared at her for a few seconds, as if evaluating something invisible to common eyes. Then, with a slow movement, he reached for one of the bottles and placed it in the girl's hands. "This, my child, is something special. A gift from the ancient traditions of the healers of the Scottish Highlands, where I was born. They say it grants the deepest wish of whoever drinks it with true faith." Iris observed the golden liquid against the light. It looked like honey, but more fluid and with small shimmering specks in suspension. "How much does it cost?" "For you, nothing." Mr. Gerald smiled, revealing teeth yellowed by time. "Just promise you won't waste it. Use it when you feel in your heart that it's the right moment." The girl hesitated. On the street, she had learned that free gifts usually came with some kind of trap. But something in the old man's eyes inspired trust. "Thank you." She put the bottle in the worn backpack she always carried with her, where she kept her few belongings. That night, In the small corner she had managed in the shelter, Iris contemplated the bottle under the weak light of the communal dormitory. If it really worked, what would she ask for? A family, a permanent home, food that never ran out? The possibilities were so many for someone who had so little. I'll save it for the right moment, she decided, hiding the bottle at the bottom of her backpack, among the few clothes she possessed. Meanwhile, in the Henderson mansion, Augustus watched his son sleeping. The company reports, the commitments, the numbers in the bank accounts, everything had lost meaning in the face of that helplessness. That night, alone in his office, the powerful businessman did something he hadn't done since childhood. He cried. A silent cry from someone who discovers that not every problem can be solved with money and power. The next morning, contrary to his usual routine, Augustus decided to take Matthew for a walk in Hyde Park. The boy rarely went out beyond visits to doctors and therapists. "Let's feel the sun, son. They say autumn in London has a special smell," he said as he helped the boy get dressed. The park was relatively empty that Tuesday morning. Augustus carefully guided Matthew, describing everything around them, the birds, the trees, the people passing by. For a moment he forgot the frustrations, the failed attempts, the hopes continuously renewed only to be crushed again. On the other side of the park, Iris had just finished a job helping to distribute leaflets for a department store. With the £20 she had earned, she bought a sandwich and a juice, rare luxuries in her diet normally composed of leftovers and donations. She decided to eat in the park, enjoying the mild sun of that day. Sitting on a bench, she observed the families, the couples, the groups of friends. Everyone seemed to have a place to go, someone to be with. Loneliness weighed more heavily on days like this, when the contrast between her reality and the lives of others became so evident. Without realizing it, her hands sought the bottle in her backpack. Perhaps it was the moment. Perhaps there, in that park, where nature seemed to welcome everyone equally, her wish could be heard. At that exact moment, she heard a noise and a muffled cry. Turning quickly, she saw a boy fallen near a tree a few meters from her bench. He tried to get up, but seemed disoriented. An older man ran towards him, coming from a kiosk where he had apparently bought water. "Matthew, are you all right?" The man's distressed voice echoed as he knelt beside the boy. Iris observed the scene, noticing something peculiar about the boy. His eyes didn't focus on anything, and his movements were hesitant, as if he was searching for something in the air. That's when she realized he couldn't see. Moved by an impulse she didn't even understand, she approached the two. "Is he hurt?" she asked, noticing a small cut on the boy's knee. Augustus looked up, surprised by the approach of the simple-looking girl. "He tripped while I was buying water. Matthew is blind. I shouldn't have left him alone for even a minute." Iris watched the man clean the wound with a tissue moistened with the water he had bought. She noticed the expensive watch on his wrist, the designer shoes, the latest model phone in his shirt pocket. Clearly a person of means. "Daddy, it wasn't your fault. I wanted to explore on my own." The boy's voice was soft, resigned, as if he was used to reassuring the adults around him. It was, at that instant, seeing the expression of helplessness on the father's face and the courage disguised as acceptance in the boy, that Iris felt something change within her. An inexplicable impulse took over her thoughts. Without much reflection, she took the bottle from her backpack. "I think he needs water. Can I offer this?" she said, extending the bottle with the golden liquid. Augustus looked suspiciously at the liquid, but before he could question, Matthew had already stretched out his hand, accepting the offer. The thirst after the shock of the fall spoke louder. "What is this?" "It tastes different. Sweet but refreshing," Matthew commented after taking a generous sip. Iris felt her heart race. She had just offered her only valuable possession, her only hope for a wish fulfilled, to a complete stranger. What if Mr. Gerald had deceived her? What if it was just some ordinary juice with no powers at all? Or worse, what if it was something harmful? Panic began to take over her thoughts, but it was interrupted by Matthew's voice. "Daddy, I'm seeing something." "Are they shadows? Spots? Something's different." His voice trembled with excitement and fear. Augustus froze, staring at his son. How many times had they gone through false hopes? How many times had the boy imagined seeing something, only to confirm later that it was just his mind trying to compensate for the permanent darkness? "Matthew, don't play with this." Augustus's voice came out strangled. I'm not playing, Dad. There's something. It's like I can feel the light. And shapes. I see shapes moving. The boy raised his hands in front of his face, moving them as if trying to touch the air. Iris watched the scene paralyzed. Could it be possible? Did the liquid really have some power, or was it just a coincidence? The businessman turned to her, his gaze divided between suspicion and desperate hope. What was in that bottle? What did you give my son? Before Iris could answer, Matthew let out a cry of astonishment. Dad! I'm seeing you. It's a blur, but it's you. I'm seeing. Tears streamed down the boy's face as he reached out his trembling hands towards his father's face. At that moment, under the trees of Hyde Park, 3 lives intertwined irreversibly. Augustus, the powerful businessman who discovered the limits of money. Matthew, the boy who lived in darkness. And Iris, the street girl who unknowingly carried the key to a miracle. The first rays of sun of that London morning touched the leaves of the trees, casting dancing shadows on the ground. Shadows that for the first time Matthew was beginning to perceive. The next 3 days were of pure perplexity. Augustus cancelled all his appointments and dedicated himself exclusively to monitoring what seemed impossible, Matthew's gradual recovery of sight. What began with shadows and spots evolved into increasingly defined contours. On the first day after the incident in the park, Matthew could distinguish movements and some basic colors. On the second day, he already identified large nearby objects. On the third day, for the first time in his life, the boy could see his father's face with relative clarity. You have wrinkles here, Matthew said, touching the corner of Augustus's eyes with his fingertips. I imagined your face differently, more serious. Augustus couldn't hold back his tears. He had hired a private medical team that monitored the boy 24 hours a day. The specialists were stunned. Scans showed an inexplicable regeneration of the optic nerves, something considered scientifically impossible. We need to find that girl, Augustus insisted to his personal assistant Richard. Search the park, the shelters, the NGOs. Offer a reward. I need to understand what happened. Meanwhile, Iris had returned to the shelter in Camden Town, her mind in a turmoil. She was torn between the guilt of having given an unknown liquid to a child and the hope that something good might have happened. What if the boy got sick? What if it was just a temporary hallucination? She decided to go back to Borough Market to find Mr. Gerald and question him about the contents of the bottle. But upon arriving at the location of his stall, she discovered that the old vendor hadn't appeared for 2 days. That crazy old man? Sometimes he disappears for weeks, informed a craft vendor from the neighboring stall. Nobody knows where he comes from or where he goes. Frustrated and increasingly anxious, Iris decided to return to Hyde Park, driven by a curiosity she couldn't explain. She needed to know if the boy was okay, if something had really changed. It was a sunny Thursday, and the park was busier than on the day of their encounter. She walked for almost 2 hours through the same spots, without finding the boy or his father. That's when she noticed a strange movement near the main entrance. Men in suits were distributing leaflets with a photo. She approached cautiously and picked up one of the papers. Her heart pounded as she recognized her own face in a photograph she didn't even remember taking. Above the image, the words "Wanted, this young woman. Generous reward for information. Matter of family interest." Iris quickly crumpled the paper and walked away, fear growing in her chest. Why were they looking for her? Was it because of the bottle? Had they discovered that she lived on the streets, that she had no family? Were they trying to blame her for something? As she hurried away, she didn't notice that she was being watched by one of the men in suits, who discreetly made a call. At the private clinic where Matthew was undergoing more examinations, Augustus received the call he had been anxiously waiting for. "Mr. Henderson, we found the girl. She's in the park right now, but she seems scared, trying to run away. Don't lose sight of her. I'm coming there now. And for heaven's sake, don't scare her anymore." Augustus hung up the phone and turned to his son, who was adjusting the sunglasses the doctors had recommended to protect his newly sensitized eyes. "Matthew, we're going to find your savior." In the park, Iris had hidden in a small grove, planning to wait until nightfall to leave unnoticed. She was used to hiding, to going unnoticed, to surviving in the city's shadows. But this time it was different. Her face was being actively sought. The roar of a powerful engine surprised her. A black SUV stopped a few meters from her hiding place. From inside the vehicle emerged a man in a suit, the same one who had been distributing the leaflets, and, to her surprise, the blind boy's father, accompanied by the boy himself, who was now wearing sunglasses. "I know you're around here," Augustus's voice echoed in the small grove. "Please don't be afraid. We just want to talk. My son, something extraordinary is happening to him." Iris hesitated, pressing herself against the tree trunk that hid her. "Please," it was the boy's voice now. "I want to thank you. I'm really seeing for the first time in my life." Something in the sincerity of that childlike voice broke Iris's resistance. Slowly she came out of her hiding place, still maintaining a cautious distance. "Are you okay?" she asked, looking directly at Matthew. The boy smiled, a radiant smile that lit up his entire face. "Better than ever. I can see colors, shapes. It's more beautiful than I imagined." Augustus approached her, maintaining an expression that tried to be non-threatening. "I need to know what was in that liquid. The doctors are perplexed. The exams show unprecedented cellular regeneration." Iris looked at the ground, unsure. "It was a gift. An old man at the market gave it to me. He said it granted wishes." "A man gave you a bottle with a mysterious liquid and you just believed him?" Augustus's voice had an incredulous, almost accusatory tone. "Dad," Matthew intervened. "Don't talk to her like that. Iris helped me." Iris lifted her chin, a gesture of pride that contrasted with her simple clothes. "I thought it was just sales talk, but I kept it anyway. It was the only valuable thing I had." "And why did you give it to my son? Why didn't you use it for yourself?" Augustus's question hung in the air for a few seconds. The girl looked directly into his eyes, "Because he needed it more than I did." The silence that followed was filled only by the sounds of the park in the distance, laughter, conversations, the occasional song of a bird. Augustus stared at the girl as if he were truly seeing her for the first time. She wasn't just a homeless person who happened to cross his path. She was someone who, having so little, had offered her only treasure to a stranger. "What's your name?" he asked finally, his voice now softer. "Iris Stone." "Iris," Matthew repeated, as if savoring the sound. "That's a beautiful name. Iris, I'd like to invite you to dinner with us tonight." Augustus's words surprised even himself. "As a token of our gratitude." The girl's eyes widened, suspicious. "Dinner at your house?" "Yes, and perhaps you can tell me more about this man from the market, this elixir. I want to understand what's happening to my son." After some hesitation, Iris accepted. She didn't have much to lose, and her curiosity about the boy's condition spoke louder than her fear. Besides, the prospect of a decent meal was too tempting to refuse. The Henderson mansion, located in the Kensington neighborhood, was like a different planet for Iris. The electronic gate, the immaculate garden, the staff, everything was a shocking contrast to the life she knew. During dinner, served at a table that could seat 20 people, Iris told her story, how she had lost her parents in an accident at 7, how she had run away from the orphanage at 10, tired of the mistreatment, how she survived on the streets of London day after day, with small jobs and a lot of cunning. "And this Mr. Gerald? You didn't know anything about him before accepting the bottle?" Augustus asked, between mouthfuls of grilled salmon that Iris thought was the most delicious thing she had ever tasted. "Only that he sells herbs and mystical things at the market. He has a Scottish accent. The other vendors say he appears and disappears. Nobody knows much about him." While the adults talked, Matthew couldn't take his eyes off Iris. It was as if he was memorizing every detail of her face, every gesture, every expression. "Why are you looking at me like that?" Iris asked, noticing the boy's constant attention. "You're the first person I've seen clearly in my life besides my father," Matthew replied simply. "I want to remember your face forever." Those words touched Iris deeply. For the first time in years, she felt truly seen, not as a nuisance, not as a social problem, but as someone important, someone who had made a difference. Dinner stretched for hours. The initial formality gradually gave way to a more relaxed conversation. Augustus, to his own surprise, found himself fascinated by the street wisdom of that girl who, despite brutal circumstances, maintained remarkable dignity and intelligence. As the night advanced, Augustus made an unexpected proposal. "Iris, it's past midnight. Why don't you sleep here tonight? We have spare guest rooms. Tomorrow, if you like, we can continue our conversation and try to locate this Mr. Gerald. The girl hesitated. The offer was tempting. A real bed, a hot bath, security. But years of street survival had taught her to distrust sudden generosity. I don't. No, I need to go back to the shelter, otherwise I'll lose my spot. I can make a call to the shelter, Augustus offered. Explain the situation. It was Matthew who finally convinced her. Please stay. I want to show you my seashell collection tomorrow. I had never seen them before, only felt them with my hands. Now I can see the colors, the shapes. I want you to see them too. There was something in the sincerity of that request that broke Iris's last resistances. All right, just for tonight. One night turned into 2 days, then a week. The connection between Matthew and Iris grew with every hour they spent together. She taught him about urban survival, about street stories, about how to read people. He shared his world of privileges, books, music, knowledge he had acquired even in darkness. Augustus observed that improvised friendship with a mixture of gratitude and perplexity. Something was changing not only in his son's eyes, but in his own heart. The priorities that had so long defined his life, business, profits, status, now seemed secondary to the genuine joy he saw on Matthew's face. Meanwhile, the doctors remained perplexed. Daily examinations showed a constant progression in the boy's vision recovery. What began with the perception of light and shadows evolved into almost normal vision. It's scientifically inexplicable, affirmed Dr. Carter, the ophthalmologist who was following the case. The optic nerves are regenerating in a way that contradicts everything we know about neurology. On the 8th day, while having breakfast in the mansion's garden, Augustus made another proposal that surprised even himself. Iris, have you ever thought about staying here permanently? The girl stopped with the cup halfway to her mouth, her eyes wide. What do you mean? Matthew has never been happier. You brought something to this house that I couldn't give him, even with all my resources. And, well, it doesn't seem right for you to go back to the streets or a shelter after all this. Are you offering me a job? The suspicion was evident in the girl's voice. No, I'm offering a family. Augustus's voice trembled slightly. I could file for temporary guardianship, then who knows? He didn't complete the sentence, but the meaning was implicit. Matthew, who until then had followed the conversation in silence, burst into joy. Yes, Iris can be my sister. I've always wanted a sister. Iris felt the world spin around her. After years of surviving alone, the prospect of a family, of a permanent home, was almost hallucinatory. It was exactly what she had wished for when she received the bottle with the golden elixir. But she never imagined it would come true this way. Not through the magic drink, but through the act of giving it to someone else. I need to think, was all she could say, her voice choked with emotion. That afternoon, alone in the guest room she had occupied for a week, Iris contemplated the new direction her life could take. The walls decorated with expensive paintings, the soft bed, the new clothes Augustus had insisted on buying for her. Everything seemed like a dream from which she could wake at any moment. But there was something true there, something that went beyond material comfort. It was Matthew's renewed gaze, discovering the visual world for the first time. It was the transformation she observed in Augustus, a man who was beginning to see value in the simple things that money couldn't buy. A gentle knock on the door interrupted her thoughts. It was Matthew holding a small package in his hands. Can I come in? Iris nodded, making space on the edge of the bed for the boy to sit. I made something for you. He extended the package, clumsily wrapped in colorful paper. Inside was a pencil drawing. It was simple, with a child's own strokes, but surprisingly detailed for someone who had only recently begun to see. It showed 3 figures holding hands, a tall man, a boy with glasses, and a girl with curly hair. That's us, Matthew explained eagerly. A family. Iris felt tears burn her eyes. That's very beautiful. Thank you. So you're going to stay? The hope in the boy's voice was palpable. At that moment, looking at the naive drawing in her hands, Iris knew she could no longer walk away from that new life opening before her. Something greater than herself, greater than her distrust and fear, compelled her to accept what seemed to be a miracle, as inexplicable as Matthew's blindness cure. I'll stay, she finally answered, hugging the boy who had brought light not only to himself but also to her life. That night, Under the starry London sky that stretched beyond the mansion windows, a new family began to form, united not by blood ties, but by something perhaps stronger, the mutual recognition of souls that met at the exact moment they most needed each other. The news spread like wildfire. First, it was the doctors who couldn't scientifically explain the phenomenon. Then health journalists who heard rumors about the case. In less than a month, the Matthew Henderson miracle was in all national headlines. Inexplicable. Cure defies modern medicine, boy. Blind from birth recovers sight after drinking mysterious elixir. Businessman offers millions for information on Heir. Augustus tried to protect the family's privacy, but it was too late. Reporters camped in front of the mansion. Tabloid shows speculated about the case. Matthew and Iris could no longer go for walks without being pursued by photographers and curious onlookers. "I don't want to give interviews, Dad." Matthew was distressed by all the attention. "I don't want to be treated like a freak." Augustus hugged his son, feeling the weight of responsibility. "We'll get through this together, son. It's just a phase. Soon they'll find another story to chase." But the media attention was just the beginning of their problems. One Saturday morning, while the family was having breakfast on the veranda, Richard, Augustus's personal assistant, entered with a tense expression. "Sir, there's a person insisting on seeing you. Says it's urgent." "Who is it?" "Felicity Henderson, sir. Your ex-wife." The silence that followed was heavy as lead. Matthew, who was playing with toast, froze. Iris immediately noticed the change in atmosphere, watching Augustus's face turn pale. "Felicity is here? Now?" His voice came out strangled. Richard nodded, uncomfortable. "She said she saw the news. She wants to see her son." Augustus closed his eyes for a moment as if seeking strength. "Take her to the office. I'll be there in 5 minutes." When Richard left, Matthew broke the silence. "My mom is here?" "Why, she never cared before." The pain in the boy's voice was palpable. Felicity had left the family when Matthew was only 2 years old, unable to cope with the demands of raising a child with special needs. In the following 6 years, her visits were rare and brief, always permeated by discomfort and emotional distance. "I'll talk to her first," Augustus said, trying to remain calm. "Then we'll decide together if you want to see her." Iris, suddenly feeling like an intruder in that family drama, began to stand up. "Perhaps I should leave you to—" "No," Matthew held her hand firmly. "You're part of the family now. Stay with me, please." In the office, Felicity Henderson seemed not to have aged a day since the separation. Tall, elegant, with impeccably styled blonde hair, she was examining the photos on the walls when Augustus entered. "Felicity," he said, without offering a warmer greeting. "To what do we owe the honor after so long?" She turned, and for an instant Augustus saw something genuine in her eyes, fear perhaps, regret, but soon the usual mask of coldness returned to its place. "I saw the news, Augustus. Our son can see." "How is that possible? Now he's our son?" The bitterness escaped before he could contain it. "Where were you for the past 6 years, when he needed a mother most?" Felicity ignored the provocation. "Is it true? Does he really see?" "How did it happen?" "Dak, it's true. And as for how—" Augustus hesitated, aware that the truth sounded absurd even to him. It was something that even science can't explain. In the following minutes he summarized the encounter in the park, the mysterious bottle, Iris's generosity. Felicity listened with an increasingly incredulous expression. "You're telling me that a magic liquid, given by a street girl, cured our son?" Her voice rose an octave. "And now you've brought this girl to live here, with our son?" The condescending and accusatory tone made Augustus's blood boil. "Iris is not this girl. She's part of our family now. And it was her gesture that did what billions of pounds in treatments couldn't." Felicity walked to the window, from where she could see Matthew and Iris still sitting on the veranda. The boy was showing something on a tablet to the girl, both laughing. "He seems happy," she admitted, with a tone that mixed surprise and sadness. "He is." For the first time in a long time, Felicity turned, her eyes now filled with determination. "I want to see my son, Augustus. I have that right. You relinquished that right when you abandoned him." "I never signed anything giving up custody," she retorted. "Legally, I am still his mother." The implicit threat hung in the air between them. Augustus knew his ex-wife well. When determined to get something, she was relentless. "I'll ask him if he wants to see you," he finally said. "The decision is his." When Augustus returned to the veranda and explained the situation, Matthew remained silent for long seconds, fidgeting nervously with the edge of the tablecloth. "She wants to see me because now I can see," he finally asked, his voice small. "I don't know, son, or maybe she realized how much she missed all these years." Matthew looked at Iris as if seeking guidance. The girl, who until then had remained silent, said softly, "You don't have to decide now. And whatever your choice, it's okay." Finally, the boy nodded. "I'll see her. But I want both of you to be with me." The meeting was tense. Felicity, normally so composed, couldn't hide her shock at seeing her son looking directly at her. Those same eyes that once wandered unfocused now studied her with curiosity and caution. "Matthew," she said, her voice trembling slightly. You're so big." "Hi, Mom," the boy replied without moving to hug her. "It's been a while." The conversation that followed was artificial, full of superficial questions from Felicity about school, hobbies, his first visual impressions of the world. Matthew answered politely but without enthusiasm. It was as if he was talking to a stranger, not the woman who had brought him into the world. The atmosphere became even heavier when Felicity finally turned her attention to Iris, scrutinizing her from head to toe with a look that mixed suspicion and disdain. "So you're the girl of the miracle," she said, emphasizing the last word to make her disbelief clear. "My name is Iris," the girl replied, meeting the woman's gaze without being intimidated. "And now you live here. How convenient." "Mom," Matthew intervened, indignant, "don't talk to her like that. Iris helped me when she didn't even know who I was." The visit ended abruptly after that. Felicity said goodbye with a distant kiss on her son's forehead and left with vague promises to return soon. But the damage was done. A climate of apprehension settled in the Henderson household. 3 days later, apprehension turned into a real crisis. Augustus was surprised with a court notification. Felicity was filing a request for reversal of exclusive custody, alleging a significant change in her son's circumstances. Worse still, she questioned Iris's presence in the house, suggesting that the girl represented a negative influence and that there were suspicious circumstances surrounding the alleged cure. "She can't do that," Matthew shouted when he found out, in a rare moment of emotional outburst. "I don't want to go with her." "And you won't," Augustus assured, hugging his son while exchanging worried glances with his lawyer, Mr. Davies, who had personally brought the documents. "Augustus, I need to be honest," the lawyer said when they were alone. "Felicity has a strong case. She never formally renounced custody. And this miracle story, well, it sounds too fantastical for a judge. Furthermore, she's alleging that you brought an unknown minor to live in your home without following proper legal procedures." "We are in the process of regularizing Iris's situation," Augustus argued. "I've already contacted the family court. It's just a matter of time." Time is exactly what we don't have. Felicity secured a preliminary hearing for next week. The following days were filled with intense preparation and growing anxiety. Media pressure increased when the legal dispute became public. Matthew started having nightmares again, something that hadn't happened since he started seeing. And Iris, feeling indirectly responsible for all the trouble, began to withdraw, spending more time alone in her room. One particularly difficult afternoon, Augustus found her packing her old worn backpack. "What are you doing?" he asked, standing at the bedroom door. "Maybe it's better if I go," Iris replied without looking at him, continuing to fold the few clothes she still had from her street days. "I'm causing problems for you." "Iris, look at me." When she finally looked up, Augustus saw that she had been crying. "You're not going anywhere. You're part of this family now. We'll face this together." "But what if the judge sides with her? What if you lose Matthew's custody because of me?" Augustus sat beside her on the bed. "It's not your fault. Felicity has always been like this, selfish, manipulative. She's not interested in Matthew's well-being. She's bothered because she no longer has control over the situation. She's his real mother. Being a mother is much more than giving birth. It's being present, it's loving unconditionally." Augustus took the girl's hands in his. "You in a few weeks gave Matthew more affection and understanding than she did in his entire life." On the morning of the hearing, The Henderson family faced a veritable media storm upon arriving at the courthouse. Journalists shouted questions. Photographers jostled for a better angle. Matthew huddled against his father, while Iris kept her gaze fixed on the ground, overwhelmed by the unwanted attention. Inside the courtroom, the atmosphere was no less tense. Felicity was impeccably dressed and accompanied by two renowned lawyers. Her demeanor conveyed absolute confidence. Judge Nelson, a middle-aged man with a stern expression, began the session with a summary of the case. "We are here for a preliminary assessment of the custody review request filed by Ms. Felicity Henderson regarding the minor Matthew Henderson. An investigation into the situation of the minor Iris Stone, currently under temporary guardianship of Mr. Augustus Henderson, has also been requested." The hearing proceeded with Felicity's lawyers painting a worrying picture: a single father, too busy with his business, who had allowed a dubious influence into his home, an alleged miracle that defied any rational explanation, a repentant mother who now wished to resume her natural role in her son's life. Mr. Davies, defending Augustus, countered with concrete facts: Felicity's history of abandonment, Matthew's evident well-being in his current situation, the procedures already underway to regularize Iris's guardianship. When it was time for personal testimonies, Felicity was first. With tears that seemed calculated to appear at the exact moment, she spoke of the suffering of having a child with special needs, how she had distanced herself not to transfer her own pain to the boy, how she deeply regretted it and wanted a second chance. "Now that Matthew can see, I deserve the opportunity to build a true relationship with him," she concluded, wiping away a solitary tear. Augustus was next. With sincerity and contained emotion, he described the years of struggle for his son's health, his dedication to providing as normal a life as possible despite the blindness, and how Iris's arrival had transformed not only Matthew's physical health, but also his emotional well-being. "As for the miracle," he said, looking at the judge, "I have no scientific explanation. Perhaps we never will, but the result is before everyone. My son can see. And that happened thanks to the altruistic gesture of a girl who, having so little, gave everything she had." The most impactful moment, however, came when Matthew asked to speak. The judge, initially reluctant due to the boy's age, finally agreed. "Your Honor," Matthew began, his small but firm voice echoing in the silent room, "my mother left when I was very little. I don't remember her being home, taking care of me when I was sick or teaching me things. I only remember short visits where she always seemed uncomfortable." Felicity shifted in her chair, visibly disturbed. "When I couldn't see, I learned to recognize people by their voice, their touch, their smell. I knew when someone truly cared about me or was just fulfilling an obligation." He paused, adjusting his glasses. "My father was always there. Even busy with work, he never made me feel like a burden." He then turned slightly towards Iris, who sat quietly beside Augustus. "And Iris? She's my sister now. Not by blood, but by heart. She taught me to see not only with my eyes, but with my soul." Finally, Matthew looked directly at his mother, his eyes now functional, meeting hers for the first time in his life. "I would like to get to know my mother better, but I don't want to leave my family. I don't want to go away with someone I don't truly know." The silence that followed was dense. Felicity lowered her gaze, visibly shaken by her son's words. The judge, with a thoughtful expression, made some notes before speaking. "This is only a preliminary hearing. I will need more information before making any definitive decision. I order a full psychosocial study involving all parties. Until then, Matthew's custody remains with the father, and Iris Stone's current situation must be maintained, with the regularization process continuing." As they left the courthouse, under a light rain that began to fall, Augustus noticed that Felicity was waiting alone for her car. Impulsively, he asked Iris and Matthew to wait for him and approached his ex-wife. "Why are you doing this, Felicity?" "Really?" She stared at him, and for the first time, her mask of coldness completely crumbled, revealing a vulnerability he had never seen during their marriage. "When I saw the news, something inside me broke," she admitted. "All those years running away, convincing myself that he'd be better off without me. And then, suddenly, he can see. And I realized everything I lost, all the moments I'll never get back. This isn't about him. It's about you," Augustus pointed out without hostility. Just stating a fact. Felicity didn't deny it. Perhaps. But it's also about trying to fix my mistakes. Am I a horrible person for wanting that? Augustus looked to where Matthew and Iris were waiting, shielded from the rain under the courthouse awning, chatting animatedly about something. Both children had been deeply hurt by abandonment, Matthew by his own mother, Iris by cruel fate. And yet, both maintained an incredible capacity to love, to trust, to move forward. No, it's not horrible to want to fix your mistakes, he finally replied. But there's a difference between reparation and possession. Our son is not an object you can claim when you find it convenient. What do you suggest then? Her voice had a tone of genuine uncertainty. Start slowly. Visit him. Get to know him truly, not just the idea you have of him. Build a relationship, don't try to force one. Felicity looked at her son in the distance, with an expression that mixed regret and hope. He hates me. He's hurt and confused. But Matthew has a huge heart. Give him time. As Felicity's car drove away in the now heavier rain, Augustus returned to the children with a strange feeling in his chest. It was as if a cycle was closing, as if the true miracle was not just Matthew's recovered sight, but the chance for healing for much deeper wounds. That night, after putting Matthew to bed, Augustus found Iris in the mansion's library, flipping through a book of photographs of European landscapes. "They're so beautiful," she commented when she noticed him. "Imagine being able to see all these places someday." "You will see them," he assured, sitting beside her on the spacious sofa. "When all this passes, we can travel. Get to know the UK, maybe other countries. Do you think she'll give up?" The question was laden with poorly disguised concern. "I don't know. But for the first time, I saw something genuine in her today." Augustus closed his eyes for a moment. "You know, for years I blamed Felicity for abandoning Matthew. But today I realized that maybe it was for the best. She wasn't ready to be a mother, especially to a child with special needs. If she had stayed out of obligation, she might have caused more harm." Iris reflected for a few moments. Sometimes people come into our lives at the right time, and sometimes they leave when they should leave. Augustus looked admiringly at the girl who, at 13, showed a wisdom that many adults never achieved. "How did you become so wise living on the streets?" "When you have nothing, you pay more attention to what really matters," she replied simply. As the rain fell outside, blurring the lights of London in the distance, Augustus felt a certainty grow within him. No matter what Felicity decided, no matter what challenges still lay ahead, that improbable family that fate had brought together under extraordinary circumstances would find a way. 3 months had passed since the preliminary hearing. Life in the Henderson mansion found a new rhythm, despite the legal uncertainties that still hung over the family. Matthew, now with his vision almost completely recovered, attended a regular school for the first time. Iris, officially under Augustus's temporary guardianship, also resumed her studies, proving to be a brilliant student who quickly made up for the years of education lost on the streets. Felicity, surprisingly, kept her word. She started with short visits on weekends, always respecting her son's space and time. Gradually, Matthew opened up to getting to know the woman who was biologically his mother, but still emotionally a stranger. On a Sunday afternoon, while Matthew showed his mother his new telescope in the mansion's garden, Augustus and Iris talked in the kitchen, preparing a chocolate cake together. "She's really trying," Iris commented, observing the interaction between mother and son through the window. "She seems different from when she arrived." Augustus nodded, surprised by his own agreement. "Felicity has always been a difficult person, but I've never seen her so genuine. It's as if she's finally let her guard down." "Do you think she'll still fight for custody?" Before Augustus could answer, the intercom rang. Mrs. Clara, who even on Sundays didn't fail to look after the house, answered and soon appeared in the kitchen with an intrigued expression. "Sir Augustus, there's a man at the gate. Says he needs to speak with Miss Iris. He's an elderly gentleman named Gerald." Iris froze, the wooden spoon full of cake batter suspended in the air. "Mr. Gerald?" "The man from the market?" Augustus and Iris exchanged significant glances. For months, they had tried to locate the mysterious vendor without success. No one at Borough Market knew his address or how to contact him. "Send him in, Clara." Minutes later, a simple but dignified-looking gentleman entered the mansion's kitchen. His grey hair contrasted with his sun-weathered brown skin. In his calloused hands he carried a fabric bag. "Mr. Gerald," Iris approached, a mixture of joy and confusion on her face. "How did you find me?" The old man smiled, the wrinkles around his eyes deepening. "It's not hard to follow the news, child. Your face is everywhere. The miracle girl, that's what they call you." Augustus approached, extending his hand. "I'm Augustus Henderson. We have a lot to talk about, sir." Mr. Gerald accepted the greeting with unpretentious humility. "I know you must have questions. That's why I came." Matthew and Felicity, curious about the unexpected visitor, joined the group in the kitchen. The boy, recognizing the name mentioned so many times by the family, approached eagerly. "Is it you? The man who gave Iris the elixir?" Mr. Gerald looked deeply at Matthew, as if evaluating something beyond his physical appearance. "I see your eyes are good, boy. Seeing not just what's outside, but also what's inside, aren't you?" The enigmatic comment hung in the air for a few moments. Felicity, confused, looked from one face to another, feeling excluded from a story that everyone there seemed to share. "Please, let's go to the living room," Augustus invited. "We have much to discuss." Once settled on the sofas in the spacious living room, with cups of coffee served by Mrs. Clara, Mr. Gerald finally began his explanation. "What I gave to the girl Iris was not a magic elixir," he said to everyone's surprise. "It was just passion fruit juice with honey and some herbal extracts. Nothing that could cure blindness or grant wishes." An astonished silence followed the revelation. It was Matthew who broke it. "But I drank it and started to see." "How do you explain that?" The old vendor sighed long before continuing. "Life has taught me that true miracles are not in potions or spells. They are in people, in what they do for each other." He turned to Iris. "When I gave you that bottle, child, I saw something special in you, a kindness that the harsh life on the streets couldn't kill. I gave you that elixir because you needed hope, not magic." "But then, how do you explain my recovery?" Matthew insisted, confused. "I can't explain it," Mr. Gerald admitted. "I am not a doctor or a scientist. I only know that when this brave girl gave up her only possession to help a stranger, something extraordinary happened. Whether it was coincidence, divine intervention, or some mechanism of the mind over the body that science has yet to discover, I cannot say." Augustus leaned forward, his hands clasped over his knees. "Why did you come to tell us this now?" The old vendor's expression became grave. "Because I've seen what's happening. The news, the reports about the miraculous elixir. Desperate people started looking for me at the market, asking for the same potion. Some opportunistic vendors began selling their own versions, promising impossible cures." He opened the bag he had brought and pulled out a stack of newspapers and some bottles similar to the one he had given Iris. "They are exploiting the hope of the desperate. Families spending their savings on frauds. I cannot let this continue." Felicity, who until then had remained silent, intervened. "Are you saying you deceived a vulnerable child, giving her false hope?" "Mom," Matthew reprimanded her, indignant. Mr. Gerald was not offended. "You are right to question. It was wrong of me, even with good intentions. That's why I'm here, to redeem myself." He placed a brown envelope on the table. "Here is all the money I've saved over these years selling herbs and natural remedies. It's not much, but it's all I have. I want to donate it to a cause that truly helps children like Iris used to be." Iris looked at the old man with a complex expression. There was disappointment. Yes, at learning that the elixir was fake, but also a mature understanding of the situation. "I'm not upset with you," she finally said. "If it weren't for that bottle, I would never have met Matthew and Augustus. I would never have found a family." Mr. Gerald smiled, visibly relieved. "You see, that's the real miracle. Not the liquid, but what it represented. Hope, faith, kindness." A contemplative silence descended upon the group. It was Augustus who now seemed lost in thought. "You know," he said finally, "for years I believed I could buy anything, that my money would solve all problems, including my son's blindness. I hired the best specialists, invested in experimental treatments, donated millions to research. And in the end, it was the selfless gesture of a girl with no resources that brought light into our home." He looked at Felicity, then at the children, and finally at Mr. Gerald. "Perhaps that is the true miracle we need to share with the world. Not a magic potion, but the transformative power of generosity. It was Felicity who surprised everyone with the next suggestion. What if we used all this media attention for something positive? Instead of feeding stories of miraculous cures, we could focus on what really matters, helping children like Iris used to be. What are you suggesting? Augustus asked, intrigued by his ex-wife's change of attitude. A project, she replied with growing enthusiasm. A center for vulnerable children. Using your business influence, my media contacts, and this extraordinary story we've lived. Iris's face lit up. A place where street children could have shelter, education, medical care. Exactly, Felicity agreed. We could call it New Vision Center, in honor of Matthew's journey, but also the new perspective we all gained. Augustus watched Felicity in astonishment. It was as if he was seeing a completely different person from the cold, self-centered woman he had known in the past. I thought you wanted to take Matthew away, he commented, unable to contain his surprise. Felicity lowered her gaze, momentarily vulnerable. I wanted to recover what I lost, but in recent weeks I realized that I can't go back in time. What I can do is build something new, something better. She looked at her son, then at Iris. These children have taught me more about love and courage than I learned in my entire adult life, and I want to honor that. That same night, after Mr. Gerald said goodbye with the promise to return to help with the new project, the Henderson family, now including Felicity in a new dynamic, gathered to plan the first steps of the New Vision Center. 6 months later, on a large plot of land in East London, the skeleton of what would become the largest and most modern reception center for vulnerable children in Western Europe was rising. The project, primarily funded by the newly created Henderson Foundation by Augustus, quickly gained supporters among businessmen, artists, and politicians. Felicity, using her media contacts and her newfound vocation for social causes, became the project's spokesperson. Matthew, now completely adapted to life with sight, visited schools, telling his story and inspiring other children. And Iris, the true catalyst for all that transformation, had found her purpose, to ensure that no child had to face alone the challenges she had faced. The legal dispute over Matthew's custody was resolved amicably. Augustus would retain primary custody, with Felicity having ample visitation rights and active participation in her son's life. As for Iris, the adoption process was in its final stages, with all psychosocial reports being favorable. The inauguration day of the New Vision Center dawned sunny, as if heaven itself blessed the initiative. Hundreds of guests and journalists gathered before the imposing building, whose architecture blended functionality and beauty. There were classrooms equipped with state-of-the-art technology, medical offices, art and music studios, a library, a cafeteria, cozy dormitories, and a large garden designed to be a space for healing and coexistence. On the stage set for the ceremony, Augustus, Felicity, Matthew, and Iris prepared for their speeches. Among the special guests in the front row, Mr. Gerald, now a project consultant for natural therapies and community gardening, watched with visible emotion. Augustus was the first to speak, briefly recounting the extraordinary journey that had brought them there. Felicity followed, surprising everyone with an emotional speech about second chances and redemption. Matthew spoke about his experience discovering the visual world and how it taught him to value other ways of seeing. Finally, it was Iris's turn. The girl who just a year before lived on the streets, without prospects or hope, now stood before microphones and cameras, about to inaugurate a center that would transform the lives of hundreds of children like she once was. Many people ask me about the miracle, she began, her voice gaining confidence with each word. They want to know about the bottle, the golden liquid, the inexplicable cure. But today I understand that the true miracle was not in what I drank, but in what I chose to do. She looked at the family beside her, then at the attentive audience. When we choose to love, when we decide to give without expecting anything in return, something within us transforms. And that transformation is contagious. It affects everyone around us. Her voice wavered slightly, but she continued. I was a street girl, invisible to most people. Matthew was a boy who couldn't see the world around him. Augustus was a man who, despite all his wealth, couldn't buy what he most desired. And Felicity was lost, estranged from what truly mattered. Today we all see, not just with our eyes but with our hearts, and that is what we wish to share through this center, a new way of seeing the world and each other. When Iris concluded her speech, there were no dry eyes in the audience. Even experienced journalists, accustomed to maintaining professional distance, were visibly moved. At the moment of the unveiling of the inaugural plaque, a surprise awaited Iris. The revealed inscription read, "Iris Stone New Vision Center, where the true miracle happens every day." The girl looked at Augustus, perplexed. "You didn't tell me the center would be named after me." "It was a unanimous decision," he smiled. "Without you, none of this would exist." In the months that followed, the New Vision Center became a model of success, replicated in other European cities. The story of the miraculous bottle gradually gave way to reports about the serious and transformative work carried out there. Children who once roamed the streets now had access to quality education, medical care, psychological support, and, above all, dignity. Mr. Gerald, who initially feared being seen as a charlatan, became a beloved figure at the center. His community garden not only provided fresh food for meals, but also served as a therapeutic space where children learned about patience, care, and harvesting the fruits of their own labor. Felicity, to the surprise of many, including herself, discovered a genuine vocation in social work. Her skill in public relations and fundraising proved invaluable to the project. More importantly, her relationship with Matthew flourished on healthier and truer foundations. As for Augustus, the businessman who once lived for numbers and profits, he found a new purpose. Without abandoning his businesses, he reorganized his priorities, dedicating more time to his family and the initiatives of the Henderson Foundation. On a Sunday afternoon, exactly 1 year after the encounter in Hyde Park that changed their lives, the family held a picnic in the garden of the New Vision Center. Matthew and Iris, officially siblings after the finalization of the adoption process, ran among the trees with other children from the center. Augustus and Felicity, now united by a common purpose greater than their past differences, chatted amicably while arranging the tablecloth on the grass. Mr. Gerald, a special guest for the small celebration, approached with a package in his hands. "A gift for you," he said, extending the package to Iris and Matthew, who approached curiously. "To always remember the beginning of everything." Inside the box, protected by tissue paper, was the original bottle, empty, clean, and shining under the afternoon sun. "But this is," Iris began, immediately recognizing the flask. "The same one I gave you that day at the market," confirmed the old vendor. "I kept it after they told me the whole story. I thought it should come back to you." Matthew took the bottle, turning it against the light, observing how the glass created golden reflections similar to the liquid it had once contained. "Do you know what we should do with it?" the boy suggested, looking at his sister. "Put it at the entrance of the center, as a symbol, to remind everyone that the miracle was never in the liquid, but in the gesture." Iris smiled, agreeing. "And to show that sometimes, when we give up something precious for someone we don't even know, we receive back much more than we ever dreamed of." As the sun slowly set on the London horizon, coloring the sky with shades of orange and pink, the improbable family gathered in that garden contemplated not only the extraordinary past they shared, but mainly the future they were building together. A future where the true miracle multiplied daily in the transformed lives of hundreds of children. In the center of the picnic table, the empty bottle reflected the last rays of sun, like a silent reminder that sometimes the simplest vessels can contain the greatest lessons: the power of selfless love, the courage to give without expecting anything in return, and the certainty that the greatest miracles happen not by magic, but by the choices we make in the face of opportunities that life presents us.